I was born and raised in Torrance. Lived in North Torrance my entire life until I went to high school and college. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, housewife back then. My father went to work. He was very, very family-oriented. I had a sister. She's 1 year older than I am. And, we had that type of very normal, kind of quiet upbringing. Came home, we did our homework, we then, would go out to play, and then we're just good kids all along, but still no Christ in our lives. I went off to UC Irvine, first time away from home, and that's when I kind of became a little bit, my rebellion kind of realized itself at that time. And let's put it that way, got a little wild. At UC Irvine, I kind of found, this newfound freedom because you're so interested in socializing. Because what I did when I was in high school was I would do my thing, whatever it was, and come straight home. But, I did start dating my freshman year, a Christian boy.
God doesn't force you to live in such a way as to please Him. He leaves that for your choice. I can choose to live my life in such a way that God is pleased, or I can choose to live my life in such a way as I think will bring me pleasure.
I would go to church for the boy. Because I thought that was something you should do, is go to church if your boyfriend says. And I just wanted to do what pleased him, and really nothing that pleased the Lord. I was very active in college, but really never saved. Really didn't participate in anything like that. But, college, during the cheer squad, all those kinds of things. And then at that point, I met my, the person who would be my first husband. And got married my first year of law school, and then in the second year I was pregnant with my son. Yeah, that marriage didn't last. He, at that time I was working as an academic counselor, and he was in the counseling center. He was the director of their counseling center at that time. And then from that point, he launched off into a career in academia. He kind of went up the ranks across the country. His career was more important to him. I can say that, firmly, that his career was more important to him than his family. I had known my second husband, who is now passed away, my late husband. I met him through my college roommate. It was a solid marriage to begin with. And then, over the years, by the time my husband passed away, we had been married 14 years.
United 175, New York. We have some problems over here right now. We might have a hijack over here, 2 of them.
The year after 9/11, my father passed away. So soon after that, my mother, who doesn't speak English, was feeling kind of alone. And for a couple of years after that, kept asking us to come move in with her. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a newlywed. I really don't want to do this. At that point, my mother was really kind of declining, and her Alzheimer's started to kick in. And then we were having issues with our marriage, my husband and I, and it was just very difficult. I was the one who had to kind of make everyone balance, and I failed at it miserably every single day, because at the end of the day, when they couldn't get their way, it was easy for them to blame me. So my mom wanted something a certain way, and then my husband wanted something a certain way. Marcus was neutral. He knew how to stay under the radar. He was a smart kid that way. So and all of a sudden, somehow it all became my fault. It was like, wow, how did this happen? That you have an issue, mom has an issue, and now it's my fault. Okay, but those are the biggest challenges. I think it took a while for them to kind of get into a rhythm with each other. There was, but primarily that was it. Culturally, my husband was very, very respectful. My mother, it was all about her. So we tried to be as respectful as possible. But it was challenging. It was very challenging because she had her needs that she wanted me to attend to. My husband was a very demanding, high maintenance kind of individual, outstanding teacher. So I did everything I could. I took care of things out of duty. It started out of love, but then it became a duty. Then there's a resentment that sets in. Then it's like, I have to do this, I have to do that, And when I went back to work, one of the things he said to me, which was very hurtful, he said, you go ahead and do that as long as I'm not inconvenienced. I said, wow, really? So, it kind of tells you that we're all kind of in a holding pattern. Even with my mother, she didn't want her life to change, but I'm the one who had to kind of try to accommodate everything. During the recession, it was a rough go. I think a lot of people felt the pinch. Now my days are from 8 hours to 12 hours, sometimes even 15 hours, constantly working. When that happens, you lose your connection. And really that's what it was. So of course, he reached out to somebody else for that comfort and all that, and ended up being, fidelity became an issue. He became unfaithful. And so at that point, I told him that together or apart, we're going to be better. Prior to that, though, I had dropped to my knees and, just surrendered my life to the Lord. I just had no more. I was exhausted physically and mentally, emotionally. I had no more to give. I was broken, just nothing, empty. We began marriage counseling through that. And I remember a time when I was just devastated. It was just so weak and broken. And we went in for our first appointment. And then by the time the second appointment came around, it became apparent to me who my Lord and Savior was. He was losing weight. He was just kind of coming apart. So, they would invoke the aid of medications and this and others, and trying to comfort himself through alcohol. He finally confessed in front of a congregation because he was going to take membership in a church. So before you do that, you just step up and you have to essentially do the sinner's prayer for everybody. And so on that day, he came to me and apologized. And I said, but he was in so much pain. And he apologized to me, and I said that, whatever you want to do, we can do. He said that, he wanted to reconcile and give it another shot, right? So then the next day, he dies. One of the things that had happened with my husband, my late husband, is that the love that we had for each other somehow became conditional. My mother, the same thing. We had it was a very difficult upbringing. It was quiet. There was no violence in the household. There was no abuse or anything like that. But it was challenging because I didn't feel like I received the full love of my mother. Whenever I go into a situation, whether non-Christian or Christian, I am praying as I walk through the door. And I was sharing this with the women's Bible study. What I'll do sometimes is I'll open the door, and then, literally and figuratively, I'll say, after you, because Jesus said, follow me. So I open the door, let Jesus in first, so I'm following him. Oh, happy day, oh, happy day. And the way I was able to do that, I had to examine my heart. I had to forgive her, myself, make amends. How do you make amends with a person with dementia? Prior to her coming home, she had this ulcer kind of thing developing on her ankle, and it just wasn't healing. The assisted living, I don't really know what the heck was going on there, but it just wouldn't heal. I would pray over her and just really try to nurture that foot, wash her feet. And then very recently, I read again what it was like when Mary washed Jesus' feet, and then when Jesus washed feet. And I said, the significance of that. Symbolically, it was her feet, but really it was a healing of our relationship. She would say things like, you're good people, you're number one. And, I'm thinking, wow, is that all it takes? At first I was kind of like, how sad that, does your life suck that bad that you have to come to this little old demented lady for some sort of validation and love? But on the other hand, I had to look at it a different way. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. And I really saw that and somebody mentioned it, she goes, she's got a little ministry going on over there. I continue to learn from her every single day in a way that God intends for me to learn from her. To bury the resentment, the anger, and really moving forward in a way that I can sincerely give her all I've got. I understand that faith is a miracle. I understand that there's a time and a place for it. When things are falling apart, maybe they're really just falling into place.